Local stories, local voices. We're localwebradio.fm.
The Semiahmoo Peninsula is an area rich in history. Join Gordie Hogg as we take a step back in today's past with candid and entertaining interviews. From the Big White Rock and train tracks along the promenade to the peaceful surroundings of Blackie Spit Park and Crescent Beach, learn the stories behind what grew us into the community we all call home.
Well, yes, this is your host, Erik Reynolds, and this is the Gordie Hogg Show, where we will be talking with Gordie about memories past and stories present in White Rock and on the Semiahmoo Peninsula. Now, I'm here today with Gordie, a longtime resident of the peninsula who also serves as our MLA, and today, Gordie will be sharing his stories and memories of what it was like growing up as a youngster in White Rock. Now, before Gordie joins us, just as a reminder that if you have questions, you can reach Gordie at his office at 604-542-3930 or on his website at www.gordonhoggmla.bc.ca. Well, hi, Gordie. It's great to be talking with you again today.
Hey, it's a pleasure, Erik. Welcome back.
Yeah,
Welcome
absolutely.
Back to our community.
It was a great conversation learning about your story and growing up, from White Rock Elementary, the Semiahmoo High, Little League coaching, and just all that you've done, the hospital board and nonprofit board, council member, mayor. I probably left out about a million things that you've done. But today, I really want to focus on some of the early memories you have of White Rock and growing up there. So could you tell us a little bit about growing up in White Rock? Sure. I guess some of my first memories are because there wasn't a hospital in White Rock. If there were car accidents or emergencies, the ambulance often came into our driveway. So I can remember laying in bed and I don't know what time, probably the middle of the night, hearing a siren and then seeing red lights flashing on my bedroom ceiling and standing on my bed and looking out the window. We lived at the corner of Oxford and Thrift then. Looking out the window and seeing the ambulance there and seeing Dad go out and get into the ambulance and sometimes leaving with the ambulance as they went off to Royal Columbian Hospital, which was the closest hospital in those days, and sometimes him being there for a while and then getting out of the ambulance and coming back in and the ambulance leaving. So that was one of my first memories. I can also remember walking to White Rock Elementary School from the corner of Oxford and Thrift, and that was seemed like a long walk, but it was always fun because there were Vera Jackson and Fraser Smith and Donnie Yelp, all kinds of people along the way that we would all seem to walk together with and had lots of fun gathering as we got to school and probably making a lot of memories together as well, probably both good and bad memories.
Yeah, there were some that we don't want to talk about.
Exactly,
right?
Not on the air.
No, stay away from those. But I guess one of the things that I remember is that Mom used to dress me up in short gray flannel pants and a blue blazer to walk to school. And apparently, as she now reminded me that I went to school every day in grade 1 dressed like that. And actually, one of the days I remember walking to school along Thrift Avenue, and some kids were going back home. And I said, well, why aren't you going to school today? And they said, oh, school's been canceled because the king is dead, or the king had died. And of course, I didn't know who the king was, but or what that meant. But I turned around and went home and said, hey, Mom, I'm home because the king died. And so she turned on the radio and the television to find out what had happened. And apparently it was true, and I got to stay home. So I tried that a couple other times. It didn't work nearly as well to be able to skip out of school with that. But she didn't change. She dressed me up apparently in my gray flannel short pants and my navy blue blazer to send me off in grade 2. And apparently I came home from first day of grade 2 at White Rock Elementary School very upset and saying, Mom, nobody wears short pants to school. This is awful. I'm never wearing short pants again.
So this outfit wasn't a uniform. It was just the outfit you wore. Oh.
It was a public school. Can you imagine her doing that to me, Erik?
Oh, my goodness.
No wonder I'm demented.
Oh, That turned from a memory to a nightmare almost.
Exactly. And I guess they didn't pick on me in grade 1, but grade 2 we were pretty old, so they figured out what was going on. And so Mom maintained that from that day on I was really probably the worst dresser ever. And I think my Laverne, my wife, would probably agree that I'm a really poor dresser. And I think Mom always thought that was a reaction to her dressing me up like that to head off to school. So that was one of the more vivid memories I have of learning and growing up in school. And I remember we used to play pole tag in White Rock Elementary School, and you could hold onto a pole and you were safe, but you'd run around and when somebody was it would try and get you. And I remember Colin Pilgrim in grade 1 or 2 telling us where babies came from. We were sitting around like, what?
Oh, no.
And I said, like, no way, that's not possible, because there's no way a stork could carry that much weight. So all those little bits of learning that come a part of being part of a community and growing up with that. Can you remember we moved from in partway through grade 1, I guess, we moved from the area and at the corner of Thrift and Oxford, where my friends, the Vera Jackson and Fraser Smith, and particularly the Sanfords, it seemed like I was moving away forever, because we were moving way over on Buena Vista on the other side of town. And would I ever see them again? And how traumatic that was. And which also reminds me that their dad had, by this time, his first office was in the Ocean Beach Hotel. And so I remember going back there once after I was elected, because he moved his office from there. He and Dr. Blades built an office with Mr. Fraser on Vidal Street, and it had Charlie McLaren's drugstore, prescription pharmacy, right next door to it. And so I would go in there with Mom and Dad, and they had an account there. So Dad would buy something and say, charge it Charlie, and Charlie was a great man who took all that. So one time, when I guess I was probably 4 years old or so, Mom received a phone call from Charlie and said, "Do you know where Gordie is?" And Mom said, "Oh yeah, he's in the backyard playing." And Charlie said, "No, he just walked into the drugstore and picked up a chocolate bar and said, 'Charge it, Charlie.'" So apparently, so that was probably at least a mile I had walked from home, from the backyard down there. So you had to have your chocolate, huh? Got to have my chocolate bar, and that seemed like a good system to charge it and walk out. Anyway, she kept me there, and Dad had to bring me home. But so after that, Mom decided that they were going to have to tie me to the clothesline, because they didn't think I should be wandering off like that. My 2 sisters and brother, I was the eldest, or am the eldest, so I think they decided Mom and Dad didn't have another child for a couple of years, because they thought it was way more difficult. So then my sister Joan came along, and she was like so easy to get along with, and Linda was perfect in every way. But my younger brother John, he was a little bit like me, but they were able to tolerate that. I guess I was the break-in for them. In any event, then we had the Sanfords, which were great friends, lived down the street, and Barry and Jerry, their 2 children were roughly my age, and their father was the principal of the high school, and their mother, Mary Sanford, was very active in the community, from the Council of Women to the hospital auxiliary, and worked with all those things. In any event, I was tied to the clothesline, and apparently I took off all my clothes and was walking down Thrift Avenue to the end of the Thrift, near the gully where the Sanfords lived, and Mrs. Sanford saw me there and reported back to my parents that I was walking down the street naked. And many years later, when I was first elected to White Rock City Council, Mrs. Sanford was the president of the Council of Women, and I was in my mid-20s, and so she had invited me to come and speak to the Council of Women. So this was pretty daunting for me in my mid-20s, and elected to City Council to go to this meeting. So Mrs. Sanford got up and introduced me as somebody who'd been a neighbor, just lived within the same block for all of these first growing up years. And And she said, and actually, he was the very first streaker in White Rock, maybe the first streaker anywhere. So with that introduction, I had to stand up and speak to these women who seemed so much older and so much wiser than I was. So it was I find an interesting way to start giving one of my first addresses as an elected politician.
Well, Gordie, let's go back. And you mentioned right at the beginning about your dad, of course, being a family doctor and the ambulances in the driveway. But, and of course, if research serves me correct, your dad wasn't just a family doctor. He was one of the first family doctors here. Now, what was that like?
Well, again, I don't know whether it was any different. I thought everybody was experiencing the world and the community the way I was, and we spent lots of times doing things together. But I guess having him, he knew the community well, and he participated in everything. In fact, I remember when I first got my driver's license and went into the gas station. I was probably 16 or 17, and Mr. Morrison said, "Hey, I was in to see your dad today, and I told him a joke he didn't know. That's the first time that's happened. So I'm going to buy you here's a chocolate bar." And so he was celebrating because Dad had a great sense of humor. But he and Mom participated in square dancing and service clubs, and were very actively involved in the community in oh so many ways. And so it was I guess that knowing that our dad was Dr. Hogg was, I guess, had something extra to it. Everybody seemed to know him and know us. In fact, one time I remember Dad saying, this was years after he'd retired, and he said, "You used to be my son, but now I'm your father." So and I think that what he meant by that was that wherever people went, people would ask me, "Oh, is Dr. Hogg your father?" And I would say yes. And then when I was elected mayor and stuff, people were saying to Dad, "Oh, is Gordon your son?" So that was an interesting juxtaposition that Dad picked out that I didn't. But one of the things with Dad getting up and leaving the house before any of us woke up, it was that he was, as I said, gone all day. But he got home at 6 o'clock at night, and Mom always had dinner on the table at 6 o'clock. And of course, the four of us kids were always watching TV when he got home and wanting to watch TV. And we get called for dinner and we wouldn't come. And we get called a second time and we wouldn't come. So Dad switched the circuit breaker and turned off the power to the room the TV was in, so the room would go dark. So that's because it was really important to he and to Mom that we showed up at the kitchen table and talked about our day and how things had gone. And of course, Joan and I used to always fight, so they had to move her to the other side of the table. And then,
of course,
so Linda, so all the fights that would happen around the table. But it was an important time, and it was things that Mom, who grew up in Manitoba, a little community called Fairfax, and they were farm families, so they always had these big farm family dinners and on every day of the week, because people were out working in the fields and the people that were there to help. So that was something that was continued and continues for us kids to today, where we still try. My sisters and family and my brother and family, we all try to get together every Sunday for a dinner to talk about and do the things that our parents put in place.
But you're probably not killing the power, though, to get everybody into dinner, though, now, are you?
No, we have to steal the iPhones and things out of their hands as they go on their iPhones and their iPads to checking what's
turn off the Internet's probably more like it today.
That's exactly it. Yeah. But the other interesting thing I think about our dinners was that Mom somehow had us believe that going out with Dad on house calls was really a reward. Which I don't understand now, but so we'd go through the dinner and which Dad, as I say, is home at 6 o'clock, and by 7 o'clock he was out doing house calls, and the number of whatever house calls he had to do. So, and Mom was saying, well, if you're really well behaved, you can go out with your dad and on the house calls. So we were really well behaved to do that, and then we would fight to see who got to shine the flashlight to be able to see the address of the place that he was going for the house calls. And if it was people that he knew or that knew us, then we often got to go into the house with him. And so we've got lots of fond memories of doing that. In fact, the house that is now the Stewart Farmhouse, which is now part of a park, there used to be Ward's Marina, and I remember going with Mom and Dad